Sky, thanks. So, well, it's an interesting one. I don't think, if I'm honest, me for viewing habits, it's not going to mean a lot as long as you've got BT. It's all good. I think in terms for WWE, we're only going to see the effect of it afterwards. We do know it was a lot less money than what Sky were paying since Wembley 92. So we know it's gone down. Look, the fact that Sky are not hell-bent on trying to re-sign it tells me that maybe they're not seen as good as figures as they once were. I mean, they're not going to just let something go that's doing amazingly well, are they? I think as well with Sky, what you've got to remember is it's put on Sky Sports, and Sky Sports with Sky is like, it's their biggest thing. I mean, it's what they draw people on. And when you've got the Premier League and you've got all these other sports like golf and Formula One, I think WWE, I don't know how much it means to the sports channel. I think if it was on Sky One, it might be different, but they're not going to pay that kind of money for WWE for Sky One. So, yeah, I personally think it's a little bit of a shame, but they also, the real reason I think it's a lot of it's down to this Sky box office thing. I think the fact that they can't be making much money off that, surely. Sky box office must be doing the less it's ever done. You've got the network now. I think Sky must be thinking, well, where are we going with this? Do you know what I mean? We've not got anything here. So, obviously BT are quite happy to do it. For BT, I think it's a good coup for BT. I think it gives them something. But then I've heard that, whilst they're getting wrestling, BT are losing the fight with UFC, and UFC might be on Sky. So that might be the real reasons there, that maybe they just want to invest it in something completely different. Anything to add there for you, Matt, in terms of this happening? And obviously there's a lot of hours they've got to put up for WWE, I'll tell you that much.
I think you hit it all on the head there. I feel like, maybe the numbers aren't so great, but the one thing that WWE has provided is consistent viewership throughout the years. There's always been that hardcore fan base that was never going anywhere, so it is good for BT to sort of bring them into the fold. If anything, I would be questioning the fact of, does WWE belong on sports channels at all? It might be the evolution of the way things go. It might become less and less recognised as a sport.
AEW is put out on ITV. It's not on a sport ITV or anything like that. It's there, and it's one of the main channels. I mean, it's a terrestrial channel. Anyone can get it, and you get a lot of eyeballs on it, especially on the catch-up stuff. So, it's fascinating. But obviously, I think BT will get their worth out of it. It all depends what the deal is going to be like in years to come. Is it worth paying more for after the first or not? But interesting there for them. Okay, question now from Jennifer. Why is WWE so bad with tag team wrestling? Well,
there's really no excuses for that.
No, there isn't. It's abysmal, and the fact that you've got AEW who's just come along and put in a lot of investment into it.
It's the fact of trying to do too much at once. There's like 3 or 4 different sets of tag team belts. So you've got the women's one, you've got the NXT ones.
Oh God, I forgot about the women's
UK
ones.
NXT ones, and you've got the 2 main promotional. There's so many. If you just had like one tag team title, the division would be so much better. I mean, the tag teams wouldn't get featured as much, but the one they did wrestle for the actual title, it would mean more.
No, I agree. And it's just not an enjoyable thing anymore. It used to be, but I just think it's because Vince is not big on it as well. I don't think Vince has ever been that big on it. I think the only reason tag team wrestling is so known throughout the 80s and early 90s has been amazing is because a lot of those tag teams come from other territories. They're already established before they got there, like the Rockers, the Hart Foundation. Do you know what I mean? Like I know they were put together, but these guys were all very established. The Nasty Boys, and from different territories. You had so many of them. So, the Legion of Doom.
It's funny you mentioned like those names though, because when you think about how great those tag teams were in the past, what was Vince's plan? Take Bret Hart from the Hart Foundation, make him a solo star. Take Shawn Michaels from the Rockers, make him a solo star. So, even then, he was thinking about other things in the tag team division.
Yeah, it's a shame because the Legion of Doom Road Warriors at one time were as popular as Hogan was when they used to come out that entrance. I mean, that music played, everyone went nuts. It is a bit disappointing that they can't seem to... It's not even putting it on at a main event level that bothers me. It's just the fact that there's no structure, there's no ladder anymore to go for these belts. And unfortunately, one of the best teams I've seen come along in a long while, the Revival, I mean, they just... It's just nowhere, are they? And I've liked The last time I saw good stuff with tag team wrestling in WWE was the New Day. I enjoyed that for like their first year. But again, they've just been pigeonholed now. They're just, that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
amazing.
Forget it.
I'm looking at Kofi now and I'm thinking, did he even have a title run? It's like he's been sent back in time a year. Like it never happened.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So not... I mean, I don't know... To be honest with you, I just don't think the priority is there for tag wrestling, if I'm honest. And the women's one, don't even get me started on that. I mean, the biggest load of rubbish I've seen. I mean, that started only earlier this year at Elimination Chamber. What have we seen since then? Honestly, what a nightmare. Okay, moving on. Shane now. I'm about to say something controversial. I read this earlier. You'll be lucky I don't read your surname out here, Shane, because this might get a bit controversial here. But maybe he's got a point. It's all about points of views. I'm about to say something controversial here, but I want to call it out. Do you think WWE is not doing as well because they are pushing women too much? Just as a thought. I have nothing against the female performers myself. Just a thought. So it is interesting. Look, everyone has different opinions. Me personally, I don't think this is why they're doing bad. I don't think it's the fact that Becky's come along and taken, or Charlotte. I don't think those have done any damage. So if I'm in a nutshell, I'd say no. I think there's a lot more to it than women being at the top or being promoted. What I do think didn't help is at the very beginning when they kept coming out every sentence, the women's revolution, the divas revolution, or whatever they were calling it, that got on my nerves. Because even at the first Rumble they did for women, every performer that come down, they was like, oh, it's a real honour for her to be here. Isn't she lucky? Tori Wilson's come back for this. Isn't she lucky? She's worked all this. And it was too much about that than there was the actual match, which got on my nerves. It was a bit thrown down our throats a bit. But on a whole, when you look at Charlotte's work, solo work, or you look at, say, somebody like Becky, who's pretty much taken it by the scruff of the neck in a lot of ways to get where she's got, I think some of those segments, some of those big build-ups have been more entertaining than a lot of the male performers, if I'm honest with you, 9 times out of 10. In fact, the women's main event this year should have been much better than it was, but it was never given the proper time, which got on my nerves, and I think that is a bit of a... You know, WWE should have prioritised better on the show. Maybe instead of doing the Elias segment with the playing the guitar and that lot, you know, cut some of that out, or the the dance off crap they did with, who was it, Archery. I mean, take that out and actually give, because here's what gets on my nerves with it, and I think it's different double standards, is if that was Brock Lesnar in the main event, there's no way they're telling him you're going home early. You can't do what was agreed, the finish. And the payoff's not going to be there, because there was no payoff with Becky at the end of it, because it wasn't the moment you were supposed to get. So I do feel for them in that. I definitely don't think this is why WWE are doing bad, is because they're pushing women. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I've got to disagree with that as well. Not because I'm trying to be a forward-thinking guy.
It's PC, politically correct.
None of that.
You've got to be careful.
I'm looking at when I buy a ticket to a wrestling event. If there's some of those names that are absent, like the women wrestlers, then I'm disappointed, because I know that they're talented people. And even when you think back to recent history and you're looking at Hell in a Cell, if it wasn't for that women's match, everything on that card would have been diabolical. That was the one redeeming thing on that pay-per-view. And if we want to look forward to the future, we can see the Saudi Arabia show coming up, and you know, we can see what life will be like without the women wrestlers there, and we can see how it goes down.
Strong, sexy, powerful. Every time you say it, as Vince says. And also on a side note, just you can't blame the women this week on Raw. There was nobody there. So if you think Raw was bad this week, no, definitely is just nothing to do with that, in my opinion. Okay, another famous friend to the show, Stay Lucky. He says, "Thank you, Rick. That man is the man when it comes to pulling off a promo, and I loved it. Even more this week, the fact that Rick said Saudi Arabia on Raw, something that WWE has shied away from. And got its own performers, only to saying Crown Jewel. Your thoughts? Yeah, it was fascinating that he kept saying Saudi Arabia.
But then saying that, they spent a long time avoiding the words Hulk Hogan. And now all of a sudden, look where we are.
Yeah. Look, he's another guy. He ain't getting scripted, Rick. And even if he is, I think he'd forget it. So you might as well just go with it. I did enjoy that moment with him and Drew a little bit. I thought, like, at least somebody's trying to... Good old Drew McIntyre, who... by the way, was in a WrestleMania match with Roman Reigns that we've probably all forgotten about now. That guy is so talented, could be so much more, but they tend not to put him in places. But he looked like a star this week on Raw, I thought. You know, when he was doing the Ric Flair stuff and the Hogan stuff, I thought like he looked like a star. Do you know what I mean? Like a good heel. I liked all that, but... this will only last for this couple of weeks. I mean, where he goes from here, I doubt there's much for him at the moment. They don't seem to have anything for him. And that's the biggest shame for me, because I think Drew McIntyre as a big, badass heel would be excellent. You know what I mean? And give him the mic, because I think he's a lot better on that than what people... I don't think he needs scripting. I don't think he needs any of that. But, you know... Braun Strowman, we know probably why he ain't going to get there at this rate. But I think with Drew, he's got the best of everything. He's a great worker. He looks good, and he looks even better now for Vince McMahon, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And you know, I think he's a total package in a lot of ways. But they just don't seem that interested, which is a shame. But it's a good role for him with Rick. So yeah, it was a nice moment. I'm sure WWE were worried backstage in Gorilla, but get him off. Son of a bitch. Maybe he's making some of that money back now for the man that he was talking about.
I don't think it really matters that much.
I don't think he'll be bothered about this game business now, though.
Just because they say Crown Jewel, we all know where it's happening. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
I mean, you are right. They have told everyone not to say Saudi Arabia on purpose, but Rick's Rick and Brock's Brock. Brock will probably say it as well. So, okay, interesting name here. Maybe it's really him. Razor Ramon has dropped us an email, Matt. And it's about AEW. So AEW 3 weeks, 3 wins in my book. Better than Raw and SmackDown as well. Have a question though. Why did fans at AEW boo parts of the Jericho Derby match with no rope break, etc.? And now I've read up somewhere about that, and I think it was to do with... I could see how AEW were booking it. They probably booked backwards, and they thought, it's in Philly... CCW land will do like the hard... They're doing the right things because they know where their audience is. And I don't think WWE do this sort of stuff enough. But you could see what they were going for. But unfortunately, there was some sort of odd spots with... Inconsistencies. And you know where they were going, because obviously his hands were tied. Yeah. They were doing that for that reason. But then in this match, an ECW crowd knows what no rules is, and they get that, you know what I mean? Like, they know their stuff. They're very educated. So that was basically it. That's why that happened. I don't think it was the end of the world. You've got to expect these kind of things. Like I say, it's only their 3rd TV show. But I think what happened, I think they booked it backwards, and they kind of overlooked something here that was, for an ECW crowd at least, not acceptable. What about for you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, there was the inconsistencies and the rope breaks, and that were an issue. And if you're expecting a no disqualification match, then a lot of wrestling fans know what that means, and they know the rules behind it.
Maybe they need to put that caption that WWE do now.
But then again, they're open to change their rules as and when they please. Maybe that's what a new no DQ match will be in AEW.
Exactly. I think, but by the way, that match I thought was excellent. Other than that, those things with the rules, I thought Darby Allin, I mean...
he's a star.
Doing some of the things he was doing with his hands behind, like going through the ropes, and I
like that though. They showcase their talent well on AEW, the younger talent.
Yeah, it reminded me of the old ECW.
They tried to do it on Raw, didn't they? This week they tried to do it with Humberto, didn't they?
Yeah.
But I don't think it comes off as well.
No, very differently done. But yeah, it was. What's great for me and Matt particularly is we were just interviewing this guy. What was it in? Was it May or something like that? Just sitting there, and he knew he was signed for AEW by them, but like, we didn't know too much about him. Now we're seeing him main eventing, an AEW Dynamite show, and I know we kind of half expecting him not to win the title. I get that, but like, what a showcase for him that he's had. He's had a draw match with Cody, match with Havoc the week before, and now this. And to me, this is, that's what I enjoy about pro wrestling. This is like I do believe in one thing about AEW. This might be a bit of a side note here to the question here, but AEW, like, they promised us wins and losses matter, and I did question why Jimmy Havoc and Darby were getting the the number one contenders. However, it's only for a TV type. If it was a pay-per-view, it'd be a bit different. But for a television, I get it. And it's showcasing those guys, you know. It really is. With someone like Jericho, I think they are really making things